Turner, Weinberg, thank you for doing this. What's going on, brother?
It's great to be here. I like that we can both go by our last names too. It just feels cool to me.
I think all the really popular people, Prince, Madonna, right? It's one name, Weinberg, Turner. How's it going?
Well, I think, as two golf nuts, I think a Tiger, one name Tiger. Everybody knows who we're talking about.
Yeah. I when you said two golf nuts, we're two golf nuts at very different levels of performance. And I'm going to redeem myself at your club this coming year from when you took me earlier in 2023. How's that?
You're too hard on yourself.
Yeah. Well, I'm working it. All right. Here's why you're here, right? I'm doing this year-end episode for sellers and mostly sales leaders. And I haven't come up with the title yet, but it's probably going to be around fundamentals, embarrassing gimmicks. And what I promised my listeners is that we're going to leave them with a year-end, New Year's checklist of the things they've got to do that are fundamentals. And I wanted your take because I know you become uber popular, and now that you're an Investopedia Top 100 advisor, and don't forget that I was your client before anyone, knew you in the financial world. They knew you from baseball, but I trusted you before you had all these accolades. But you have built a really neat following, and it's so much fun consuming your content online. And you have become the ultimate promoter of fundamentals over gimmicks. And here's what I want to tell you. And the reason I wanted you to join my audience of sales leaders and salespeople is because in my community, people live every day with FOMO that they're going to miss out. They're going to miss the quick fix, the secret sauce, the shortcut. And it's so interesting as I deal with that in my world in sales, I know you do that every day in the world of investors. Why do investors have so much FOMO and always live in fear they're going to miss out on the cool, hot, new thing?
Well, I think it starts with the fact that pessimism is what sells. So when we look at the financial media in general, pessimism is what you see. And the reality is there's 14 hours a day that they have to fill airtime with. And pessimism sells and optimism sounds like you're not being realistic is what people will tell you. And then on top of that pessimism, oftentimes it's compounded by the fact that, hey, in order to fix this pessimism, we have this new solution that is going to fix the pessimistic situation that we're in. And now things have changed forever. And what worked for the past 100 years is no longer going to work anymore. So you needed this new product, this new solution, this new gimmick that's going to help you. And I think it's no different in sales than it is in investing. I always say there's two ways to invest. There's ways that work and there's ways that don't work. And we want to focus on the ways that work.
We could go forever on what you just said. I think my audience is probably laughing on the inside hearing you preach sales fundamentals in your own way. Because I swear part of the reason I have the business that I have and the reputation I have in my little corner of the sales improvement world is because I've been one of the strong voices yelling, they're all lying to you, even though they're popular on LinkedIn, telling you everything has changed and nothing that used to work still works, right? Those Johnny-come-lately loud voices that we tend to call the charlatans, the nouveau faux experts who have the perfect thing that's going to help you sell right now because what we used to do doesn't work anymore. You're seeing the same thing in the world of investing. And I want you to go a little deeper. You just said something about CNBC, and I've heard you say this before. They've got 14 hours of airtime to fill. In fact, I think someone in the financial world even told you, why are there all these crazy stories? And you're like, well, they got to fill the day. Why do you advise investors to not click on the clickbait, the 5 stocks you need to buy right now? And even you've told me, turn off the financial news. Go down that path a little bit deeper. Why is it so dangerous when you keep getting told by these experts, oh, you need this right now?
Well, I'll start by posing a question to everybody that's listening. What is the agenda of somebody that's on the financial news? So sit there and think about that for a second. The agenda that they have is to get you to watch whatever article they are producing, whatever show they have, and whatever airtime they have, they want you to be watching it. So their agenda is completely selfish, right? Their agenda has nothing to do with you. So why, if their agenda has nothing to do with you, should you tune in and take the clickbait that they're putting out there and say, hey, based on what they're saying with something that's promoting their agenda, I should take that and now implement it in my own personal financial life. So that's where I would start. And I'm pretty passionate about this topic because for me, when I first started, everything that I've learned in personal finance has been by doing it. So when I first started investing, I was so nervous that I was going to lose all the money that I put into the market that I was the person watching this. And I remember thinking like, okay, well, they're telling me that this stock is going to go down. And I can remember the first time I ever watched Jim Cramer, and he was talking about different stocks. And I'm like, well, if Jim Cramer's saying it, it's got to be right. And now I realize over the course of time, like Jim Cramer is a extremely smart individual. Jim Cramer is also a extremely good marketer. Okay, he is a media personality, and he has a lot of airtime to fill. Jim Cramer's agenda has nothing to do with your personal financial life. Okay, his agenda is to get you to watch his show and to be entertaining. So it's really important that no matter what you're doing in life, understand what the other agenda is on the other side of the table.
Yeah, that's really helpful. It's funny as you say that, I think about all the noise that Kathy Wood, right, and her ARK Investments created. I remember that first year or two where she was getting popular. She was on every day. In fact, there's one particular financial site that every day there's a Kathy Wood article. And what's interesting is, when she owned the world, when she was buying up tech bargains and COVID drove all these multiples, everyone wanted to talk about Kathy Woods. What no one talks about is what happened the 2 years after that, right? So she made a lot of people 100% one year, but if you kept your money with her, right, what happened, right? Playing the short game versus playing the long game. And could you address that? In the same time, for those that are watching this little clip on video, I want you to move away from your microphone and your sweatshirt strings. I want you to show your compounding chart, because we'll go. You go talk about Kathy Wood and other trendy stuff, and then I want people to look at the graph on your chest, because you regularly talk about this, and I'll butcher the way you say it, but you always say it's time in the market. And right, and you talk about the difference between fundamental investing, and there's so many analogies for sales here, but the difference between fundamental investing and gambling. So talk about Kathy Wood and your shirt.
Yeah, well, let me start by kind of giving an analogy to sales. In sales in particular, right, it's about the fundamentals. It's the same way in investing. So the hardest part, though, is when you see somebody else having success, whether it's investing or in sales, and they're doing something that you're like, I don't think that should work, but for whatever reason it did work. Because the reality is sometimes things just work, and there's no rhyme or reason to why they work. But the idea is that going to continue to work over a really long period of time? So whether it's sales or investing, our goal is to do things that are going to work over a really long period of time. And oftentimes, that's the fundamentals, right? Some gimmicky thing might work for a while. And Mike, to your point, Kathy Wood was the hot topic really during COVID. The tech stocks were booming. She was investing in all of them. And it was really interesting. I saw a chart here recently of Kathy Wood's portfolio, which is mostly tech stocks. And let me just preface this by saying Kathy Wood is extremely smart, okay? That does not have to do with how her investment returns are going to be long term. She's got to be doing something that's fundamentally good that she can continue to sustain for a really long period of time for you to have success. But I saw this chart that showed Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway and Kathy Wood's position. And Kathy Wood's position is like going like this during COVID. And then over time, you can see Warren Buffett's position is just kind of like inching along, almost like this little turtle. And at the time, I actually owned some Berkshire Hathaway. And I was thinking, man, I wish I owned some of that Kathy Wood stock, because like her fund is going to the moon. Everybody's talking about it. And this is somebody that's coming from, I've been doing this for 15 years with my own money. I think, lived through enough experiences where I would think that I am a reasonable and rational person when it comes to the market. And it's still hard for me when I see something like Kathy Wood's fund blowing up and thinking, man, did I miss out on that? Have things changed? Now we fast forward to 2023 and we've seen this pretty steady decline for Kathy Wood's fund. And you saw Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway just continue to go up, right? Now, look, I'm not telling you to invest in Berkshire Hathaway, but it's a good analogy to think about the fact that Berkshire Hathaway is the epitome of fundamental investing. They've been doing something for 30 plus years that works, that they're going to continue doing. And I wear this shirt a lot that Mike's referencing. So it has these little lines that work their way up. And I call it my compounding hoodie. I also have this exact same picture on my computer on my home screen, because it's a good reminder for me, not just in investing, but also in life and relationships and business, that things just take time. Good things take time. And oftentimes it's doing the fundamentals over and over again that you see success. So if we look at even 2023, for example, Mike, there's been no positive news. It's not like, oh, well, you know what? We are going to have a soft landing. Oh, you know what? Interest rates are going to come down at the end of the year. It was always like, I'm not sure what's going to happen. Interest rates are going to keep rising. And look, the reality is nobody can predict the future. But what I can say is over the past 100 plus years of investing, the fundamentals haven't really changed. You buy companies that you feel like are going to grow their cash flow into the future, and you hold on to them for a really long period of time. It's about as simple as that. And I think getting back to the fundamentals, you've seen people that have relied on the fundamentals for the past 18 months and they've been rewarded for it. And that has come at the expense of people that have chased the shiny object. They've chased Kathy Wood's fund. They've chased NFTs and they've chased all these other things that they don't really have any fundamentals behind them, but they were the hot topic at a time.
I love that you brought up NFTs because I was going to ask you about that. I violated your advice, my advisor and my friend, and I was listening to, this is a true story. I was driving out to the golf course yesterday, and it was like maybe the last nice day of the year we're going to have in St. Louis, and I was listening to CNBC on satellite radio, and the thought hit me about a year ago how everyone was talking about NFTs, right? Whatever, the non-fungible tokens and this way of collecting art and paying and doing this and doing that. Even people in my own industry were doing posts about what they're buying in the world of NFTs because we got to understand this stuff. It's the future. And I was laughing, thinking about you and getting ready for this conversation. I haven't heard the phrase NFT in over 6 months. Like, what is wrong with us as humans that we have to jump on the bandwagon? We feel like we have to chase. We ignore the chart on your chest, right? We ignore the long-term fundamentals. We'll throw it all out because of either envy or greed or fear of missing out. And in my world in sales, it's the shortcut. Nobody wants to prospect. Nobody wants to work on their sales story. Nobody wants to do better discovery. And I interviewed my golf coach for this episode. You know what the first thing he talked about was? The golf grip. The least sexy thing. Nobody talks about the grip. He's like, the grip is the most important thing. It has all this effect on your connection with the club and where your wrists are throughout the entire golf swing. But when you get on YouTube or you talk to golf manufacturers and nobody wants to talk about the grip. In similar in my world, they don't want to talk about the fundamentals. They want the trick. Give me the magic bullet. Show me the secret inbound marketing or what perfect little maneuver is going to get me the meeting. And I see the same thing. Like, what is the problem with us that we would chase an NFT? No one can even talk about what they're gone, right? And aren't all the experts that were promoting them gone?
Yeah, well, you talk about golf and you talk about the golf grip. Everybody wants to buy a new driver when in reality, you'd be better off just fixing your golf grip. And it's those simple things. And I think in investing and in money management, it's almost the same way. Everybody wants to even talk about investments, right? Whether it's NFTs or whether it's Berkshire Hathaway, investments are kind of like what is always fun to talk about. But the reality is what really matters is like, what is the plan? What is the strategy to get to the plan? And what are the goals that we're ultimately trying to accomplish? And then after we do all that work, then we can figure out, okay, well, what investments make the most sense for me to accomplish all those things that I actually want to accomplish? And those are the questions that actually matter. It doesn't, what investment you choose to get to that goal, I think matters far less than figuring out what the goal is in the first place. And then you're saying, like, what are the best odds I could give myself to accomplish that goal? And that's different for everybody. So again, that kind of ties back to what we talked about at the beginning, Mike, is the fact that in the financial media, they're talking about something that has nothing to do with your personal financial life. So why are you listening to an idea that they have about some earnings call for some stock that you don't own, that maybe you shouldn't even own, that has nothing to do with your financial life? But now all of a sudden you left that 15-minute conversation and you have FOMO about missing out on the stock that some analyst came on that you'll never see again. And he's saying it's going to go up 30% in the next 12 months.
Jacob, it's powerful. But here's what I'll say. It's also the flip side, because you started going down this path a few minutes ago. I have good friends and relatives who are market timers who they think they know. And so, take an example. You said going into the beginning of this year, what were the predictions? Oh my gosh, the recession is going to get worse. We don't see a soft landing. Inflation is never going to stop. I mean, those were the predictions. And if you listened to those and got off of your plan and the long-term, compounding, smart, diversified type of portfolio that you advocate for people based on their circumstances, obviously, you would have pulled out. And I've had this conversation with people close to me because someone scared them away from the truth. And did you not post on LinkedIn? I don't know, was it a week or two ago, maybe even this week, the chart about 94 out of 100 years when you're in the market? Can you just talk through because I think there's this belief that we know better, we're going to outsmart the system, or because we started talking about we miss on the upside and we get FOMO because of NFTs or Kathy Wood. But I think the other side is even more dangerous to some people, that they get crazy protective and they don't look at what the real data says, right?
Well, look, the data shows something that a lot of people don't ever want to talk about. That 3 out of every 4 years in history, the S&P 500 has roughly been positive. So that means 3 out of every 4 years, the market's gone up. Now, I can assure you that 3 out of every 4 years, all the news cycle has not been positive. And then on the flip side of that, when you extend out the time horizon, once you get to 10 years, 94 times out of 100, the S&P 500 has been positive. 94% of the
Can you
time
repeat
over a
that?
10-year
Repeat that
period.
number. Repeat that again.
94% of the time over a 10-year period, the S&P 500 has been positive. And I think
On
it's
any
really
10-year
important.
period.
Any 10-year period. I think what's really important to understand is there are a million smart people out there that sometimes have really good intentions when they talk about where they think the market's going. They have data to back it up. They have a formula that they feel confident in. And frankly, they're smarter than me. But the reality is sometimes the market doesn't always act in the most rational form. And I think what people forget is investing in general, but especially with the stock market is a forward-looking entity. So it is projecting out what it thinks is going to happen in the future, and then it's reflecting back in current prices today. I can remember a conversation I had with somebody who I would quantify as one of my 5 smartest friends in all of business earlier this year. And he essentially gave a presentation on why everybody should just go to T-bills, which are treasury notes protected by the government. They're earning about 5%. And he's like, I've done it with my entire portfolio. I sold everything. I went to T-bills. The market is going to crash. Here's the data that backs it up. And I got to be honest, I was listening to him and I was thinking, I don't know if I agree with you, but everything that you're saying is rational, right? It wasn't like he was making this up. And since then, the S&P 500 is up about 25%. Okay, so this is one of the 5 smartest people I know. And I still think to this day, he's still one of the 5 smartest people I know, even though he was predicting something that it went completely the opposite direction. And I think it's important for people that are listening to this that whether it's particularly in investing, the market is not always rational. And what we need to do is we need to take our chips and stack them with the highest odds in our favor. It's the same way with sales, right? If you made one outbound phone call, and you thought like, I'm going to have success with that versus the guy that made 1,000 phone calls, which one do you think would land more prospects? Well, obviously everybody would say the guy with 1,000 phone calls. And if we viewed investing the same way and we said, if one person invested for a day, the other person invested for a month, and the next guy invested for 10 years, which one of those would have the better likelihood of success? Well, everybody would say, well, obviously the guy that invested for 10 years. Yet every single time through that cycle, we always are trying to do something to not be the guy that's investing for 10 years.
Well, that's powerful. All right, let's wrap it with this because there's so much here, and I need to get back with my audience and kind of put the sales wrap on this and give them their list for the rest of the year and set them up for 2024. Just yes or no. Boring trumps sexy. Give us your thoughts there. Boring trumps sexy.
Look, there's a time and a place for cool investment ideas and strategies. But the core portfolio, the portfolio that's going to sustain your life moving forward, the portfolio that you need to continue living your life in the future is not the place for it. Okay. That is the place for things that work. The campfire stories are not in the core portfolio. The campfire stories are once you have enough money in that core portfolio to do things that, I feel good about, I feel confident about, maybe I have an edge in that area and it could earn an outsized return. But the reality is that core portfolio, I always recommend boring over sexy every day of the week. It's what I do with my own money. And look, it just plain works. Like there's 2 ways to invest money, the way that works and the way that doesn't. And the whole goal of investing is to stack the odds in your favor. So I'm a boring investor, Mike. I certainly have some cool campfire stories, but that is money that's outside of that core portfolio, which I know we've talked a little bit about.
Yeah, well, I'm a boring sales coach, and I wrote a really simple book about boring fundamentals. And somehow I'm still standing, and people keep knocking on the door asking for help. So I just want to say thanks, man. Thanks for what you're doing for the community. Congratulations on being named an Investopedia Top 100 Advisor. That is a big deal. And thank you for letting me and my wife sleep well at night by serving us so well.
Well, Mike, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate everything you do, and you don't give yourself enough credit. I read Mike's book, New Sales Simplified, when I knew nothing about sales. I'll never forget the day after I read it, I implemented it in a prospect meeting and had my computer up, just went by the playbook, and it's amazing what I've been able to learn from you. So I appreciate you, my friend.
All right. Cheers. Here's to great stuff in 2024.